Empire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, happy Friday, everyone. No, I don't have the helmet yet, Callow, from the place I went to. They they told me, we don't want you to have to carry this on your carry-on. We don't want you to get all scuffed up. We made you a brand new helmet. We're going to ship it to you. So hopefully you'll see it on Monday, the Empire Media football helmet, like legit $1,000 football helmet. Wait till you see this thing. It's awesome. It's going to be cool.
I was going to say, slightly disappointed that it wasn't in the background, but you explained.
We'll get it today. So, yeah, these guys at Green Gridiron, I went down there to do a taping with them. We talked about the Commanders, and they basically showed me everything about football helmets. And since you're a gear nerd, and I know you don't collect helmets, you're going to appreciate this conversation because I learned more about every little piece on the helmet than I ever thought I would ever learn about. So it was actually very cool for the football nerd in me to go see this and have somebody explain why all these things are important and what's changed fashion-wise with helmets through the years. Actually pretty cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, helmet news, like people don't really realize. I'm sure you guys had to have mentioned this in passing. The Revolution Riddell helmet finally was retired this year, and that was like the cool helmet when I played in high school 20 years ago. So the fact that that has been around as long, yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised things keep changing with helmets as the health gets better.
Yeah, well, this is fashion in sports. Fashion in sports has changed. The helmets become part of the fashion. The NFL was very obviously reluctant. Then Oregon started doing helmets, a different helmet every week. And then people like Sean Taylor just started doing things to the helmet anyway, and it probably got fined for it. But like that kind of started a revolution. And then he was telling me, I thought this was actually really interesting, and I'll get into the Commanders in a minute. But like, the visor was initially used for players who had vision issues, really with the sun is really what it was. It was like an exemption. They were like allowed to wear sunglasses because of the sun. And they had to get like a medical exemption or like an optometrist to like tell the NFL this player needed this. And then it became cool, which that other players wanted to wear it just to wear it, not necessarily because they needed it, but because they wanted, it was like tinted windows. Like they wanted to have it, which then led to this thing and that thing and this little thing and that little thing. And all of a sudden you've got like the can of worms was completely opened. And now you see everybody customizing their helmets. And honestly, for someone like you who knows the collectible market, more is more. More is more. And I think the NFL's understanding that. Everybody's understanding that now. The marketplace for all of this different type of personalization, like it's a good thing for everybody, not just for the players who are trying to express themselves.
No, I very specifically remember when I would play high school football that the visors were banned unless you had some kind of condition. You could wear a clear one, but if you had any other kind of tint, you needed to have a note to do so, because that was the whole reason. It was only being done because it was cool. There was no safety behind it or whatever. It was because it looked cool. That was it. So I remember being a little bit of a part of that.
So I'll show you this thing next week when it shows up here, but I appreciate they were like, we're just going to ship it to you. We just made this thing. We don't want you to throw it in a carry-on bag and get it all scuffed up and like bring it in. Then it's like, what was the point of doing that? And they were like, you're not going to know how to fix it. So they mailed it to me. We'll see it next week. All right. Let me get into the NFL a little bit this week. Now, post-draft, there's a very good piece from Tim McManus, who's covered the Eagles for a long time, ESPN. And he talked about the makeup of their team. And, the thing that really was like obviously the gap needs to be bridged for Washington to get where they want to get to, specifically with them. It's with everybody, but for them, it's paramount because they're in their division. So, this is fun because we're setting up for Battle of the Heavyweights. I saw the first NFL power ranking come out from NFL.com. It had them number 1. It had Washington 6, which I saw a lot of people put, what world are we living in now? Because how long has it been since there were expectations? And actually during this interview that I did yesterday with Green Gridiron, while we were making the helmet, we were talking a lot about the Commanders. He asked me like, what are you looking forward to in the future with them? And I just kind of blurted out, we haven't had expectations in a long time. And like, that's actually going to be fun. Like, I'm convinced in a couple of weeks when the schedule comes out, you're going to see a lot of night games or primetime games. Like, they're going to be in this. We've already talked about the schedule. Not only is it just Philly and Dallas, NFC East games that are always a big deal. They're playing the NFC North. They're playing the AFC West, like prime opponents. They're playing in Kansas City. They're playing in Green Bay. They're playing the Bears again. They're playing the Lions again. Like, it's going to be big time, like matchups for them. Big time. And so like they're going to be profiled. And because of Jaden and because of what they did a year ago, they have expectations on him, that's interesting because like when I read this piece from Tim McManus, one of the quotes into there from Howie Roseman was basically, there's no guarantee of success, even if you have really, good success, but Philly they've drafted well, and the major money that they've put into free agents or trades have done really, really well. They're built to last. And that's actually very, very, very hard to do in the modern NFL with the salary cap. It takes one mistake with a quarterback contract. It takes one bad draft. And then all of a sudden, all the things that you put together kind of fall apart like a house of cards, or put you in a position where you're just not as strong as you were. It's hard to have any kind of stability in the NFL these days. And they're kind of built to last. And one of the scariest things in like looking at them a year ago was essentially that their defense was so cheap and now here they are drafting, 5 more players at the top of their draft just to kind of fill out on the defense because the offense is good and the offense is paid, that they have the luxury of just bringing in these young guys. And unfortunately, they're good at it. Like they got Quinyon Mitchell a year ago. They got Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis hasn't even lived up to expectation, but he's not bad. Nakobe Dean's turned out to be good. Nolan Smith's turned out to be a hit for them. Cooper DeJean looks like he's going to be a very good player, special teams and as a defensive back for them. They're built to last because a number of these guys, and I like kind of flagged this a year ago. I looked at them and I went, they don't even have to pay any of these people for 2 more years. Once you get to the point where you don't even have to pay anybody for a couple more years, you've got a system that's set up. Doesn't mean they're going to win. It's the NFL. They're playing the same hard schedule we're playing. They got to deal with expectations. Their locker room a couple years ago got really weird, so you never really know what's going to happen with them. Injuries could always happen. Like, there's no guarantees in the NFL, but the whole idea of was the bridge gapped, and it has to be to kind of catch them. I think it's just hard for anybody to do it because of the way they've drafted and the way they've put their team together and the state of how much they have to pay defensive players, the good ones. They've got at least a couple more years runway, in my opinion, right now.
No, I was going to say their quote unquote biggest problem is going to be how that defense meshes. But that's it, though. Like, that's the only, and like, that's something that, we even saw it here last year where the defense could struggle early on and you can clean it up in the second half. So with them, it's going to be about, if that defense isn't good right away, because I'm not ruling that out either. Like, they could be good right away. Wouldn't surprise me. So, like, the fact that that's the only thing that, is their red flag, it tells you just how stacked they are, that they're going to be able to get through it. Like, I thought the craziest thing with them, too, was not only did they add on defense with their draft picks, but in free agency and with trading, like players on their own team, like they turned it over themselves a little bit and are reloading in a different kind of way. So, yeah, I think with them, the fact that everyone is already taken care of on offense, the offense is just going to be like a machine, and they're going to just swap out gears as each piece, goes away too. I think that's what's scary about them as well. It's going to be, one of our wide receivers isn't working out. We'll just go sign one. Oh, one offensive lineman has fallen off. We'll go draft one. Like, they don't have to have this mass replacement of the offense either. I think that's what's crazy.
It's interesting though, like in the skill position part of it, like they've done unbelievably well on offensive line. They've drafted all of those guys. Like they've done and signed them all. Like, so they've done really, really, really well there. The 2 things that could hurt them long-term is Jalen Hurts has had a lot of head injuries. And I think I talked about this a year ago. He got hurt in both of the Commanders games last year. And I talked about this a year ago. I'm like, I'm concerned about him long-term. I saw some signs of, like there was some late decision-making that wasn't processing as fast. And I'm just genuinely concerned about his long-term health. But then Super Bowl rolled around. He looked fine. NFC Championship game rolled around. He looked fine. The other part is like, yes, A.J. Brown is incredible. Devontae Smith was a great pick. Turned out to be a great, great, great number 2. I'm not sure what he would be if he was their clear number 1, but as a number 2, he's like impossible to deal with. If you actually look what's behind that, they've actually drafted a number of players, brought in players. None of them look like they're breaking out. Like there's no, like the guy behind them that they need. At tight end, they have good tight ends, not great tight ends. Now that Goddard's prime seems to be a little bit behind him. They had to go get Barkley because they've always had good running backs, not great running backs. So if there is one kind of Achilles heel that looks like Howie's not great at, it's finding skill position people. They have to acquire them. Like they had to go get Saquon Barkley. They had to go get AJ Brown. Obviously they did really well by doing that with both of them. But if you're looking for where's it going to turn potentially, at least to bring them back to the mean a little bit, it is those spots. Because outside of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, like they're the ones that traded for Jahan Dotson. That wasn't a boon for them. He didn't show up there and become a great player for them, not at least in year one. All the other receivers behind them, like when we get ready for the games, we're not scared, of any of them going into it. The running back situation was always good, not great, right? Like good, not great. They're always trying to plug in somebody to find something. Now they got Saquon. They have one of the best in the business. So there's that part of it that could, if AJ Brown either gets unaffordable or doesn't want to be there anymore, anything like that, that could change the dynamic on them. But that might be wishful thinking really with them because they're kind of so built to last, especially up front on the lines.
Yeah, I mean, to supplement your point, though, the fact is that Howie is so good at managing assets that, that's not a concern either.
They got too many draft picks. I read all these things where people were like, they can't use all these draft picks because they can't all make the team.
The trickle-down effect from the Carson Wentz trade is still going through. That's the craziest thing. He has continually moved the picks around. That's how he got AJ Brown, was through the Carson Wentz trade. So, I think that's the other side of this, though, is that's what I was kind of, making the comparison of they're all just gears that can be replaced essentially. Roseman is so good at just identifying what they need. He's no nonsense. He doesn't mess around with it. And he just refills the roster how he should refill it. And that's what happens when you have a competent organization. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the hope here. We want to mirror that. We want to be that eventually, but it does help that there's somebody at the helm that's not going to mess things up either.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, it's interesting. Over the last 10 years, they have had 4 head coaches.
Yeah.
And I've lauded this, and this can go the other way. There's a slippery slope. When you make changes that fast, it can be perceived as dysfunctional if it doesn't work. In their case, they seem to have their pulse on their locker room and their team so well that when things are going a little bit wrong and they pivot and do something where people go, whoa, what's going on here? They come out smelling like roses on the other side, which is actually a sign of complete function within the organization. We had a bad year. Something's not going right. What's going on? Let's fix it. And last year, boy, I mean, I can't imagine they weren't really close to removing Sirianni. I can't believe that they weren't really close to doing that. And look what ended up happening anyway. And they won anyway. And so they really, when they pivot, it doesn't look like, or it doesn't feel like, and the results speak for themselves, it doesn't feel like it's a flippant or not thought through thing. They do it because they need to do it. And it's worked out for them for a number of years now. To move on from Andy Reid, maybe the time had probably come. They bring in Chip Kelly. That was obviously a mistake. And they figured it out real fast. They didn't sit back and go, oh, let's wait it out. Nope. Carson Wentz, once it turned, they moved on. They were like, that's it. We're done here. Doug Peterson, they won a Super Bowl with him. And a couple of years later, they go, this isn't happening anymore. Last year, they were like, we need to get different coordinators in here fast if this guy's going to be. And every time, when and at the same time, their roster's so good that they're kind of right there. So even their pivot points, they're not wrong about. This is the scary part of trying to chase a team like this.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned Sirianni, but clearly they knew well enough that they were going, it's not as bad as you think it is, right? Because they still kept him on board. And now he's one of the ones that, probably warrants an extension, right? So, yeah, I would say that's the other thing, having the adults in the room and being competent on top of an already very good roster. It's hard to catch up. Yes. He doesn't misstep either. In the draft, he usually just takes the best players available. They don't go for these home run swings either. That's one thing that I've appreciated with Roseman, and I've knocked him for it before, but it's worked out for them. The roster is very, very built up on both sides.
Oftentimes, too, when you have a real problem, obviously some things need to be changed there a couple of years ago. When you have a real problem, there's a disconnect between either ownership and GM and coach, or there's just a total disconnect here. We live that, previous administration. We lived that for a long time, that there was a clear disconnect between likely ownership and whoever the coach was at the time, because there never really was a GM. I guess Bruce Allen kind of was, but he was more kind of a middle manager in between the two sides. And there was always a dysfunction, a disconnect, and they were talking right by each other. And you saw the results of what that was. There doesn't feel like that is here, that they're all actually on the same team. It doesn't mean everything goes right all the time, but they are. And that is the one thing about what I like about what's happened here and what's happened so quickly. And I talked about the draft class that Washington got, it felt very purposeful. It felt like not only is Adam Peters and their scouts looking at everybody and going, these who are the people we think are the best players for us, the best fits for us, all that stuff. But there seems to be clear communication consistently with Dan Quinn and the coaching staff, like to show the note from Cliff Kingsbury that said draft the Oregon tackle. I know how often Peters and Quinn are meeting. They are in lockstep with one another. I think this was half the success of San Francisco, is that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are on the same page. They're not fighting against one another. They're making choices. Like, I'm sure everyone's got an opinion about this player, that player, but they move forward together. And it is like off of this draft, it was pretty obvious. Again, if you look at the picks, all of them were done purposefully. They were necessitated. They were definitely in coordination with the coaching staff as well. It isn't Peter saying, I know the talent, you know the coaching, just leave this to me. They're consistently working together, which is, I think, part of the secret of what Philadelphia's success is. Not only are they picking really good players, they're re-signing their own, they're moving on from things when things go a little bit wrong really fast, but they're doing it in lockstep with one another. It's very obvious that there's no disconnect there. Washington seems like it's in that place. Our roster just isn't there yet. So we're fighting an uphill battle against the team that's got the best roster and just won the Super Bowl. But at the same time, we're trying to play catch up. And so that's where things will be interesting for Washington over the next year again, because look what happened here. They have a small draft class. Hopefully they'll end up being starters for them. But they did exactly what they did a year ago, which is they re-signed a lot of guys to very short-term deals. And as of 2026, we're going to be going through that churn again to try to get to the point where you want to be where Philly is, where they just use the draft almost as, okay, like, let's just take best player available because we're kind of so good in so many places that we can use the draft that way to our advantage. Ours had to be very selective and productive for very specific reasons because our roster just isn't there yet. We're getting there, but it's just not there yet.
Well, yeah, and that's the other side of this too, is like you see Washington has to supplement their roster through trades. Well, that takes away from the depth and the long-term pieces that you're going to have. Granted, like, yes, they still have.
They did it too with AJ Brown. Like, to be fair, they did it. That's been a hit. They did it too with AJ Brown. They did. I mean, they're lucky. Saquon was free and clear. They didn't have to. They should have had to trade for him. Like, they should have never have gotten to the point where they just signed a guy like that.
Yeah, but this goes back to what I said like a couple of answers ago, where Howie knows how to asset manage. Where they got AJ Brown with the Carson Wentz trade, so it didn't really cost them the precious draft picks. Whereas here, it's kind of the cupboard was bare, or cupboard was with the basic ingredients is what I will call it. And Adam Peters had to pick. Do we want to take some young guys or take some swings here while Jaden Daniels is good? And I don't think there's a wrong answer there. Whatever is there, you kind of take. So there's a franchise left tackle that you're going to have for a couple of years. Great. There's a second wide receiver to Terry McLaurin for a year. Great. Like, I'm okay with those moves. The thing is making them, your roster will suffer just a little bit, in the long run. Granted, if 3 of these draft picks were to end up being starters, that's still a basis to be able to build upon it next year as well. So they're slowly but surely building the roster back up.
Yeah, I mean, the other part is like the secret for Philadelphia clearly is they draft really, really, really well. And when you do that, it solves so many problems because it keeps you in a position where the pay for the better players, especially when they are the Jalen Carters, Quinyon Mitchells of the world, are stabilized for a period of time. And that's why drafting well is so very, very important. But outside of AJ Brown and then Saquon Barkley, who were studs that they went and got. And I still, for the life of me, don't understand why AJ Brown was traded, that they didn't want to pay him. And the Barkley thing we've talked about a million times. I mean, I don't know what the Giants were thinking a year ago, putting the line in the sand, but they did. And they acted on it. Good for them for being able to do it. If you kind of look around outside of Zach Bond, the free agent signings that they bring in don't typically end up being the impact players for them. They end up drafting the majority of the players that they do well with. And Washington's secret, hopefully will continue to be, Look at all the free agents they brought in a year ago. Look how many of them ended becoming really major impact players for them. Frankie Louvu is a hit. We're hoping Deebo Samuel's going to be a hit. We're hoping Tunsil's going to be a hit. Dorrance Armstrong was exactly what they said he would be. Bobby Wagner was exactly what they said he was going to be. You know, there were a couple of minor misses on one-year deals for like Michael Davis, something like that. But in general, Biotish was a hit for them. Allegretti, I know everyone's talking about like, let's see what happens, what the line looks like. But if he's your primary backup, great. And he was a hit for them for what the price that they paid to have him go in there and actually be a starter. So they've been able to find all of these people to fill in the holes very quickly. I'm not sure you could say the same thing about Philadelphia, but they also haven't needed to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For them, it's a luxury. Like, they've had so many picks over the years that they haven't really needed to go and do this. Now, granted, too, like, you know, they haven't hesitated to go sign the guys. Like, we've mentioned Saquon a million times. They didn't have to go and make that move, yet they did. So, I don't know. I feel like for them, they're also threading the needle, but they trust their process when it comes to the draft too, because how do you kind of keep building this roster up? It is with cheaper talent than with free agency too. So they're leaning the right way too. It's not like they're doing it the wrong way, obviously.
I will say this too, just because, you know, what we do for a living is fun. The fact that these two teams are going into the season, you know, basically perceived as two of the best teams in the NFL, and one obviously should be perceived that way because they just won the Super Bowl. Like, we haven't had this in a while. Been a while since we've been part of something like this. I do wonder, like, everyone keeps asking me, do you think the opener is going to be at Philadelphia? Because they always have the Super Bowl champion on the first Thursday night game. I think it's a distinct possibility that's how we're opening the season this year.
Oh, I mean, you know me. I said this the second the season ended. I said they were going to be opening night no matter what, whether it was the Chiefs or the Eagles. That's what I said. So I'm not going to be surprised if we see Thursday 8:30, you know, for that week one matchup, because especially just because honestly, like, Jaden became a story, but we didn't have any primetime games except for the Falcons game after that Cincinnati game, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
That's right.
Right. So like, I think
the Falcons game got flexed into it. It wasn't supposed to be.
Exactly. So like, I think even the NFL was like, we're going to make sure this guy gets on more primetime games next
100%.
year. And
I'm assuming we're playing on Thanksgiving, like, because like that feels like an assumption that's happening too. So it's going to be a lot of prime games. So we'll see. All right, let me get into RFK for a minute, because we're now 4 days removed from the announcement that the DC government, Muriel Bowser, has a deal with the Commanders to build a stadium. I'm not going to go through all the money and the machinations of all that stuff. You know, you have to wait and see. Like, the DC City Council has to approve this. They need 7 votes to do it. 4 of the members showed up to the announcement at the National Press Club on Monday. A 5th has subsequently said they're going to support it. So assuming no one changes their mind, that's 5, 2 to go. There's only one that I know of for sure that basically said, you know, I don't care what the deal is. I'm just not giving money to the NFL or stadiums. And like, I understand that position. Not everybody's going to agree with this. And it's easy, actually. Sometimes it's easy for a politician who knows something's going to pass to make some kind of, basically, whether they believe it or not, they could say whatever they want, because it's going to pass anyway. And they could sit there and go, but I didn't vote for it. Right. But if they feel like that's what's good for their constituents, just to say that I didn't vote for it, when wink, wink, we already know this is going to go through. And I think I'm at the point of wink, wink. I think this is going through. There hasn't been a level of pushback that you would expect that would get in the way of this happening. And unless a couple of these council members are really hiding in the weeds, are going to come out hard when push comes to shove, it's been so quiet. It's not that people are being steamrolled here. It just feels like I don't hear the type of public pushback that you would typically hear in a situation like this. So I'm expecting this to happen. You know, like, I know everything with Monumental, they got way ahead of themselves with the Virginia stuff, and then Louise got in the way, and anything could happen here. And with this type of stuff, really, in DC, if you've lived here your whole life, anything could happen here. So I'm not rubber stamping anything, but just the level and lack of anybody overly going out of the way to seemingly get in the way of this tells me that we're rolling downhill here, and this is really going to happen.
Well, and I actually talked about this a little bit on my show, comparing the rollouts with Ted and with the Harris group and stuff too. Here's the other side. they're putting it at a place where the infrastructure is already there. Do they need to fix it? Obviously.
Yes.
But like, no one has questions of taking, can Metro have capacity? It has in the past. Whether that area can handle all of that people. It has. Like, the fact is, too, they are off on a much better foot because I've said this before. RFK still literally being available is a big win for them, in that they know that they can work a stadium down there because they've done it before. So yeah, this is where this is where I also think the pushback is hard to literally push back against them as well, because they're going, you don't want a stadium here, but there's always been one here. It just hasn't been in use in 7 years. So what, like, the argument here is flimsy because the stadium has already been there. So that's where I think the overall arching non-pushback is coming from. What did you think was going to happen there?
The big thing that people are like openly complaining about, and I think this is a fair complaint, is there's not going to be enough parking. Like, and they've basically acknowledged this. 8,000 parking spots for a stadium of that size is only going to accommodate a very small amount of people. So what's going to happen? Well, all the parking lots in and around the wharf and anything that's even remotely close are going to become places where people park. It will encourage people to take public transit. So hopefully they will take more public transit, because it's just going to be the easiest way, I think, in and out of there. And then for the neighbors that are right there, if there's one thing, like, I'm sure some of them don't want a stadium, but like, there's kind of nothing they can do about that. Their one chief complaint could be to the city, we don't want everybody just overrunning our neighborhood with cars on game day or concert night or whatever it is, because you have to accommodate it some way. And we don't want 1 million people in our neighborhood. And I'll hear them out on that part. So there may have to make some kind of rules on game day, like you can't park here unless you're in a certain zone or that type of stuff. And I'm all for that, because I do want to protect the neighbors and their rights to have, as quiet a neighborhood as they possibly can, not overrun by fans of whatever event is going on there. So I'll hear that part out of the whole thing. I have a feeling this is going to be a boon for the parking garages down the street. All the like that giant parking garage at the wharf, get there early. You're going to want to be in that to be able to get up to the new RFK. So that's the one thing, like, I'll hear out. I think the parking is a big deal. I don't think it's not a big deal, but the rest of it, to me, if they follow through, and you got to remember, it is legislated that there are certain things that have to happen on this site. It can't just be a stadium. They can't go, whoops, we just turned this whole thing. There has to be open green space. There has to be some housing. There has to be residential, commercial. Like, they are, by law, they have to do some of the things that they said they are going to do. And just because I just have heard such little resistance from really anybody, I'm assuming this is happening, and probably happening pretty soon.
On your parking question, or your parking, solution too, guess what? When the Nationals aren't playing, Navy Yard's fair game too. Like, the amount of parking over at Navy Yard is actually like crazy high between all the office buildings, the apartment buildings there. The actual Nationals garages, you're allowed to use them on off days. You have to pay for it because the sports book is right there, but that's also an option. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, people are going to just adapt how they go. Like, I talked about this with, people like me that still tailgate over in Landover. Like, I started tailgating because it was an option. Like, all of a sudden, if you're going to just tell me, oh, not as many people can drive, I get it. Like, I will adapt to it. Like, go ask Nationals fans how they adapted to Navy Yard, right? There used to be nothing down there. Now there's everything around there. The options are going to flex and they're going to change as the stadium gets built up more and more. I'm not concerned about that. Like it's just not something I'm that concerned about. It's a city. You can figure it out. There's public transportation. The options are bigger here.
Yeah, and there will be beneficiaries of people at parking garages that are a little bit farther away that people could either walk to, or they can do shuttles to, or they can do whatever, host tailgates or whatever they want to do. So I think things will work out there. It is one thing, though. I don't dismiss it as something that is going to be something that's going to have to be a learned behavior for everybody going down there, because 8,000 spots is 8,000 spots for a 65,000 seat stadium. They're going to, like, it screams encourage, take public transit to go down there. But so we'll see how it works out. But hopefully it goes through. And just 5 days later, I was waiting for everybody to raise their hand and go, I'm getting in the way of this. And I haven't heard anything like that. Just one council member who says, I just won't do this for anybody. It has nothing to do with this specific deal. And the rest of them are almost dead silent about the whole thing. So it says it's probably happening. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram Watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. It's time to head to the track as the first leg of the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, is here. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your Kentucky Derby info and sports betting action. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA and NHL playoffs to MLB and UFC and boxing, Bet Online has you covered for all your online wagering info. In between games, head over to the Bet Online Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. It's time to run for the roses. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, welcome back. All right. I want to be part of the complete national intervention group to ask the question, what in the world is going on with Bill Belichick right now? This is creeping into territory that I think people are trying to wrap their minds around, heads around, and try to get a sense of what's going on here. I do believe that when you either make decisions or decisions are made for you that clearly you don't want them to be made, that this does potentially cause you to make decisions in other ways in your life that you, I don't know if regret's the right word, but might be out of character. So I'm going back to the way things ended in New England started a cascading effect of what appears to be decision-making by Bill Belichick that is interesting, to say the least, and is getting stranger the more you kind of learn about what's going on here. I'm not judging the relationship. I know what the age difference is. He's not the first to be part of something like this. Apparently, I read some article that his girlfriend, or however he wants to classify her, had dated someone much older than her right before him. So say what you want about whatever that means, but like, this isn't the first time. And like, I read some quote from this, very wealthy older man. He was in his 60s, who said something like, she's actually very smart. We actually broke up. It's actually very copacetic. Like, she's actually really, basically, I really love her. It just didn't work out with us. But the Belichick thing with that interview the other day, and now all these revelations that she has a role in the UNC football program, which doesn't really totally make a tremendous amount of sense. It's not like Belichick, who I think was married for a while and then had a girlfriend for a long time, very like a long-term girlfriend. I never heard a thing about her running the Patriots or having like a lot of say in the Patriots organization. I heard about some crazy old man in the shadows who was doing all the dirty work in the back room that you didn't know about, but I didn't hear about, his significant other having some kind of say over Tom Brady's contractual situation. Like, I never heard anything like that. And that's where we are now. And so it's all kind of just confusing, I think. Like I think we're all just at the point of going, like, what's going on? What is it? What is happening right now? Like, why is this happening? He's the greatest coach of all time. Why would she have any say in anything he does with football? And I think that's where people are just getting concerned about him and want to have an intervention with him about it.
Well, it's just so anti-Belichick to bend the knee to anybody. And we're seeing it happen with her. And what I thought actually the worst part about this week, well, not the worst, but like the one that made me feel really icky was the response to the interview. He doesn't care what the media says about him. He has said crazy things when doing those Patriots press conferences. Like, we had Bill Belichick clips once every 2 weeks, bare minimum, right? Like, he wouldn't say anything.
Right, because it was beyond standoffish. It was just like, I don't care what you think, moving on.
Right. It was incredible at times because he would be so out there that, like, he talked about the snap face and the Insta face or whatever, like, where you just didn't even know social media. Like, we had those clips all the time, and he never responded to that. And the fact that there was a PR response from UNC, being pushed through UNC from him, I'll put that in air quotes because we don't know who it's from.
Right.
Kind of pushing back that's where I was like, all right, like, what are we doing here? And to pull back the curtain here too as well, like, I'm sure you feel the same way. Yes, you're there to promote a book, but you're never talking just about whatever the product is that's being pitched or, that you're pushing along there. they're going to ask you other questions about other things. And so,
especially when you're in your 70s and you're dating a 24-year-old and she seems not only extremely involved in the program, but she's sitting in the room for the interview.
Right. And like telling you, oh, we're not going to talk about that. Well, you don't get to rubber stamp or approve what's talked about unless this is some crazy outlandish question. But that wasn't a crazy outlandish question with how much he was involved. The other red flag, by the way, which I think someone had pointed this out, was here it is. It's UNC. You got all this NIL booster money, whatever, to get this guy to come coach for you. He's sitting there doing this interview on a major news network, for a big interview, and he's wearing a tattered Navy sweatshirt. Like, you couldn't put some Carolina blue on for that. And, like, I know it's him, but like, if you're UNC, you're going, guy, you're our head coach now. We understand Navy is important to you, but like, you couldn't throw on a Tar Heels hat or have something in the room. And I kind of agree with that. Like, they ponied up a crap ton of money to get him. You can't promote the brand a little bit there too. That's a red flag to me as well.
There's so many dynamics to it that I think are like flummoxing everybody. Like, yes, for years and years and years, he just did not care what the media thought, answered no questions. Here he is needing seemingly someone to tell him what his instincts are. Just don't answer these questions.
Right.
Like, that didn't make any sense. Here's someone who basically tried to get rid of Tom Brady before his career was over. And here he is listening to a 24-year-old who has no football experience whatsoever. And she's somehow dictating things in some way to him. That's why I think everybody wants to intervene in this, because we're going, this isn't you. Like, warts and all, we know who you are, but you're not acting that way right now. And you seem to be under some kind of spell. And I think that's where we're all kind of confused about the whole thing. And I got to tell you, like, if his goal is to be there for a year, whatever, and get back into the NFL, I'm not sure that this will stop it from happening, but it's going to give a couple owners pause of what is going on here and what is her role going to be in our organization if we hired him. It's just confusing. That's all. And like, when she interrupts this interview and she comes over there, and he's sitting there like listening intently to what she has to say and saying nothing back. Not that he's like needs to admonish her or anything. You're just kind of like, who's in charge here? And it feels like it's her, when here is the person who was, I'm in charge for years. I'm in charge and I don't really give a crap what you think about what I do. And here's someone 50 years younger than him, no experience, looking like she's pulling the strings on him. I've never seen anything like this. Like, I think that's why everybody's just kind of confused. And there may be really, really, really simple explanations for all of it, but it doesn't feel like there's one, other than she has a tremendous amount of control over him. And I think we're all just worried. That's all. We're just like, what happened to Bill?
Well, and like, with her too, she's not that experienced. Like, if she was experienced in PR, she wouldn't have piped up and said, we're not talking about that. Like, you would have had that story laid out. And that's what I thought was weird about the press release. It was like, as it's well documented, we met on that plane ride or whatever. It's like
why are you even addressing it anymore? Like, who cares?
That's what I wanted to say. Why didn't you just freaking say that? It wouldn't have been a big deal. Like, you're talking about a book, so he's asking personal questions here.
And I believe CBS when they say there was no, like, we didn't talk about what we wouldn't talk about in this interview. Right. And Belichick is a master of, I'm not answering that question. He doesn't need any help with that. And if he gives you one of his classic 2-word non-answers to something, then they just won't include it in the interview. The only reason why this went the way it went was because she was monitoring it the whole time and interrupted it so many times that CBS felt compelled to show that. So, that's why we're all like, what's up?
And who among us hasn't had a friend that has started dating somebody and you're like, this is
what's going on here.
This is going sideways.
Yes.
You have to pull them aside and say, are you sure this is okay? Or you have to let them learn their lesson. It's either one or the other. You either, as a friend, try to put your hand on the wheel and get it back on the road, or you go, you're going to have to deal with this one because we can all see it. You're the only one that does it. So we've all been there too.
Like, we'll see in the fall. Like, is she on the sideline?
Right.
Let's see. Let's see what happens this fall. It's going to be interesting. All right. One real quick thing before I take a break. Kentucky Derby is tomorrow. We've been airing Road to Preakness 150 here. Our second episode is out this week. And we'll have a few more as we lead up to the Preakness in a couple of weeks. But the Derby obviously is tomorrow. I'm a huge fan of horse racing. I just want to say this about the Derby this year. I haven't seen it like this in a long time. This is an extraordinarily weak field, extraordinarily weak field. The morning line odds came out before the post position draw early in the week. And there was the favorite is a horse by the name Journalism, who looks like a favorite. There were two others that won major prep races, actually one came in second in the Florida Derby, Sovereignty. I actually went to the Florida Derby a month ago. And then this other one, Sandman, who just won the Arkansas Derby. And that's like the last major prep race before the Kentucky Derby. And they're both like 5-1, 6-1. You're like normal numbers you would get for what would be a favorite. The next closest odds coming in on morning line from any of the odds makers was, I think, 12-1. And there were 10 of the 20 horses that were at least 30-1. Like, this is one of the weakest fields I've ever seen. So I'll just, I hate saying this because I hate picking the favorite. Journalism ought to win. And if he doesn't, there's only one or two others that seem like they have a reasonable shot here. I don't know what happened this year. Like, the crop of horses that are in this, there's like 5 or 6 of them. And it's a lot that I don't even think should be ever in a race like this. So I'm shocked. This is one of the weakest fields I've ever seen for this race.
So you're saying take the favorites. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Take the favorite. It's the first time ever I would just say that. Take the favorite. I can't even make a case for one of these long shots. It's just an unusual year. All right, let me take a quick break. Brave Western Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. We haven't had a chance to talk about the Capitals, who have advanced to the second round to play Carolina at the time that we're taping this. We don't know when game one is. The Eastern Conference second round is now set now that Toronto got through. We're waiting for the Western Conference to get through, and I guess they're waiting for TV schedules to figure out when they're going to start round two. I will say this, and this is unusual. The NHL playoffs through round one is very chalky, which is unusual for this sport. There's always typically some total out of nowhere feels like shock. And there hasn't really been one. I know a couple of lower-ish seeds won their series, but Florida, they beat Tampa, so one of them had to lose, right? Washington wins, Florida wins, Toronto wins, Carolina wins. Total chalk. And in the Western Conference, as things are shaking out and it's not over yet, looks like it's going to end up total chalk. That's unusual in the NHL playoffs. We typically get one that comes out of nowhere where someone gets eliminated in the first round. It hasn't happened yet.
No, I mean, I will say the Jets Blues series is interesting. The fact that one is that close and it's the President's Trophy winners, I will say,
Hellebuck went nuts for a couple of games where he couldn't stop anything.
Right.
Yeah, which was, maybe the shock of the NHL playoffs. I mean, here's maybe the best goaltender in the game, and for 2 games couldn't stop a thing.
Right. So that's the one that I will just raise the flag on, that the Blues are in it. But, do I think they're going to? No. As far as the Eastern Conference goes, honestly, what's happened here too is you look at the teams that have loaded up offensively. They're all the top 4 teams. And that was pretty much how it was going to go, because the other 4 didn't have the offensive prowess to match up against their opponent. Ottawa scrapped for a couple games, couldn't keep up with them. Same thing. Montreal, you could argue, was even with the Caps for 3 games, essentially. And the Caps still took care of business, and beat them in 5. When it comes to Carolina, they've been there before. The Devils haven't. And Carolina is way more stacked offensively. So to me, it's more about the teams that stack themselves up and, continually build upon them. It's hard to catch up too. I look at Florida too. That's another team that they continually added at the deadline. They were really good. It took them a minute to get their footing this season, but they're fine. there is a clear talent discrepancy in the top 4 teams. So I'm not surprised the Eastern Conference was chalk. I'm not surprised the Western Conference is going a little bit longer, though, either, when it comes down to it.
All right. So it's possible the Cap series will start on Sunday, but we don't know yet, and maybe not. So this may be a moot point now, but just in case that they do play on Sunday, what do you think? Like, what's your lean right now as they get set to play Carolina? I mean, I think this is a totally different animal than what they faced in round 1. And so I think for Carolina too, actually, but like, I think for the Caps, they're playing a team that's here and Carolina's over here. So I think this is a massive, massive difference of opponent here.
This is one where I'm thinking 6 or 7 games. It's going to go long. I don't think this one's, going to be short at all. I also think you have to ebb and flow with this series. Like, you might see a 3-1 lead and it might go to 3-3. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if that happens on either side. What I will say is this. I think the Capitals, they found their physical footing in this series. Tom Wilson knows that he can kind of flip a series, and he's got the scoring touch. Ovechkin, everyone talked about how much he was physical in that first round. I think if those two guys keep it up physically, the Caps, they should be able to weather the storm, no pun intended. And the other one is Connor McMichael. Like, he was the best player in that first round series, and he should have had a bunch more goals. Let's hope he buries some of those chances against Carolina, because I thought he was the best player on the ice in that series.
I got to tell you, I've been talking about him for a few years. Like, I thought he should have come up sooner. Like, I thought they should have turned the page a little bit sooner. Whatever, what's done is done, and they've actually had a really great year here. That has been a great development. He's been great. He was great in that first round. He could have had a hat trick in one of those games. He got robbed a couple of times. He's been outstanding for them. But this has been kind of the magic of the whole thing. At every turn, they're getting career years out of young guys like Protas. McMichael's now showing up in the playoffs like this. The defensive players that they got turned out to be just incredible. Logan Thompson was ridiculous in a couple of the games for them. It's just all kind of, here's Ovi scoring again. Wilson looks like Wilson, who, by the way, Pat McAfee's favorite team now is the Washington Capitals. He has them on every week. He had Wilson on yesterday, he had Ovi on after he loves them. So we're getting all the pub of that. Like, we get the McAfee bros are all bandwagon Caps fans now.
Well, with Tom Wilson, it's a bit for him too. He doesn't call him Tom Wilson. He calls him that son of a bitch, Tom Wilson, because he's a Penguins fan. So that's why there's like that little bit of that ribbing there. So that's the only thing. But of course, he's in the media, so he respects everybody. Yeah, I am shocked that one came through, but the series was over with. So that's when you squeeze in all of these interviews anyways. But yes, the Caps getting that national attention a little bit. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this series. This is going to be a heavyweight fight. Can't wait. And there's no, even if they do get through it, they're not the point is about the chalk. They're not catching a break. It's either Florida, Toronto on the other side, which is, we're going to get into a boat race if it's Toronto, and with Florida, I mean, here's defending Stanley Cup champs who got better at the deadline. So it's a heck of a road if they're going to end up getting there, but we'll see what we get from Carolina first. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.